Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I am interviewing Orrin Lieuwen. Orrin came on to share his story of self-love and self-discovery. Orrin helps frustrated and overwhelmed entrepreneurs understand how they create their beliefs and emotions so that they can change them in order to fuel high performance behavior and massively increase their results. Coming from a background filled with social anxiety, low self esteem, lots of internal resistance, and almost no self awareness, he now experiences life as a confident, purpose driven entrepreneur who loves bringing others into the internal freedom and resourcefulness that he has experienced. This conversation with Orrin is really refreshing, and he helps us look at things in a whole new way. We talk about things like emotional intelligence, which is a big one, self awareness, and some really simple things that you can do that is going to help you on this journey of self love and self discovery. So jump on in, meet Orrin. My name is Katie Allen, and this is Self Love Ignited. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Self Love Ignited. Today on the podcast, I have the pleasure of interviewing Orrin Lieuwen. Orrin, welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited to have you here. Why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself to everybody?
Thank you, Katie. Thank you for having me here. And hello, everyone. As Katie said, my name is Orrin Lieuwen. I come from British Columbia, Canada. I love the land of the mountains and the lakes. And yeah, I'm excited to be here today.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And Orrin, real quick, can you please just give us a brief overview of what it is that you do? Because I know that you do some pretty awesome stuff.
Yeah, so for business owners and for leaders who get stuck in problems and feel frustrated and overwhelmed, I help you understand how you create your beliefs and your emotions and how you can change them in order to fuel high performance behavior and massively increase your results.
Okay, that is super cool. And I feel like that's really important as we get into your story because it's very much tied in, right? Like your own personal journey has led you here.
100%. My business is an outflow of who I am.
Yeah.
And so that will become clear as we move on.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's get into your story then. Let's start talking about that. So this podcast is really about telling stories of people who've gone from not liking themselves, not loving themselves, not believing in themselves to sort of transforming that and stepping into love and acceptance and belief and all that sort of good stuff. So why don't we go back and sort of start at the beginning of your story? Where did your challenges with yourself begin?
Yeah. So I grew up in a small town in northern British Columbia, a town of 2,000 people. And actually, I grew up on a farm 30 kilometers out of that. And so we homeschooled for the first 5 years of my life. 5 years, well, I didn't actually go to school for the first 5 years. I homeschooled for the first 5 years of school. And then when I went to school, I was a little bit behind in academically, especially in math. And so that was one of the layers. And also because I grew up 30 kilometers out, when I started going to school, there was also a bit of a lack of social abilities, of social skills. So there was social awkwardness there. And then thirdly, in my school, sports was very important, and it was very highly valued. And I would play sports, but I had the strength of a guy who grew up on the farm, but I didn't have that coordination. And so I was also the bench warmer on the school team. And so just these multiple layers together in a small town where there was not a lot of like self-awareness or emotional intelligence lended itself to me having a quite low view of myself. And I wouldn't say that there was any, like, I wasn't someone who experienced trauma, like a lot of people have. It was just I was not developed as I grew up. And then that played into a lot of my adult life, just kind of feeling not enough.
Yeah. And I think it's really important that you recognize that there wasn't a specific event, there wasn't a traumatic event. And, for some people there is, and for some people there isn't. And even if you don't have one, it doesn't make it wrong, right? It doesn't mean that you should just get over it. Like your feelings are still very valid and very real, regardless of how you got there.
Everyone has their own stories, right? I was talking to someone yesterday who who was might become a client, and she was talking about how she feels bad because her life is way better than many people's lives, but she has these difficulties.
Mm-hmm.
And so then there's the difficulties, and then the guilt can also get layered on top of that. And I said to her, I said, hey, everyone has their own difficulties, everyone has their own sorrows, and we need to take those seriously, right? Yes, other people do go through difficulties, that's for sure, but don't discount your own story. And yeah, so
Yeah.
everyone's difficulties, they're real, they're valid, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They are. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, Orrin, walk us through. So, here you are, you're a kid, you've been homeschooled, you've now just started going back to sort of like regular school with other kids, and you've realized that, in sports, you're maybe not measuring up, and things like math, you're maybe not measuring up, and you're really feeling
Mm-hmm.
this hit to your self esteem. So, what sort of happened from there? How did that follow you into, later teen years and into adulthood?
Mm. So as yeah, I would say that those three layers just did continue with me. And as I graduated high school, I come from the faith-based world, and so I went to Bible school, and I started moving into the missions world. And in that world, there was just a really deep, passion and a really deep sense of purpose to really make a difference, to serve people, to love God. And but in that, so there was this deep sense of purpose. And so I felt like, I was giving myself to a life of really adventure and purpose and meaning. And that was great. There's a sense of fulfillment in that. But as I lived that out, I still oftentimes felt like I was held back.
Mm,
Like oftentimes there's successful people, right? But I just not one of them, right?
yeah.
Maybe, God made them successful and he just made me, right? And so I didn't expect much of myself because I didn't think that life expected much of me. And so then there was just some low standards that I just thought were normal, and was this is just how my life is going to get. This is what my life is worth. It's not worth that much.
Mm,
And
that,
so then the result of that is I didn't put too much effort into really cultivating that.
yeah.
And then it just became a perpetuating cycle, right?
And it's interesting listening to you speak in a very different way, but I can see myself in that as well.
Hmm.
Not thinking much of myself, not thinking that there's the successful people and then there's me.
Yeah.
And I might as well, like, I'll do enough to get by, but I'm
Yeah.
not gonna do the next level because it doesn't matter because I'm never gonna get there anyway. Like I can 100% identify with that. And I know that there's a lot of people out there who can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So here you are, you're like entering this world of passion and purpose and adventure, but also kind of holding back and not really all in there, not really believing in yourself.
Yeah.
How did you go from that to the man you are today? Because the guy you are today, I see someone who like is passionate and believing in himself and helps other people do the same. So what bridge that gap?
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a long journey. It's
Yeah.
been a long journey, Katie. And I think as anyone who has gone on this journey would probably say, the journey
Mm-hmm.
of self-discovery, really the core of any hero's journey. And all of our favorite, movies and novels have this self-discovery really um, undergirding it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, so when I was overseas for a couple of years, and my team leader, he gave me a book by John Maxwell called Winning with People. And I don't think he was just like, hey, this is a good book, you should read. I think he was intentionally like, Orrin, I think here's a good book for you. So I was reading this book, Winning with People, and just really things started clicking into place. I started saying, wow, this is how trust was built in this relationship over. This is what went wrong over here. And it started really putting some pieces of the puzzle together for me as far as relationships go. And and so I read some more of John Maxwell's books, and I ended up getting certified by the John Maxwell team. And so I would say John Maxwell, he was kind of like the doorway, the gateway for me into the world of personal development,
Okay.
which when I experienced it, it was just, my hunger and my purpose, my passion to live a life of purpose. stepping into the personal growth world, it was like, oh my goodness, right? This was everything that I had been, well, it's just so powerful. And so I was in this world of personal development for years and growing in emotional intelligence, and but still sensing that there's something holding me back, still often, having this resistance and this fight with myself. And it was about a year ago when I was talking with a coach, and she was working with a model in neurolinguistic programming called self-concept. And we were going through this practice. And I remember, because I was having such difficulty with cold calls. As you can imagine, cold calls are difficult for normal people, let alone people who struggle with self-love,
Yes.
right? That, rejection call after call. And so she was asking me, like, so get in touch with this resistance. What does the resistance want for you? I was like, well, there's a fear. I don't want to get rejected. So what do you want? Well, I want to be successful. And what will that success give you? Well, that success will give me, happiness, and I'll be able to provide for my family. And what will that give you? Well, that will give me peace, right? And it was like just tracing the resistance that I had down to deeper level values, and I started seeing, my inner conflict and how it can all be resolved, how really understanding myself and valuing every part of who I am to really work together congruently, how powerful of a process that was.
Mm.
So I went full tilt into that field, and really that's where I would say it was just unlocked. And I was able to identify negative self-beliefs and transform them, and really has helped me hugely come to the place where I am now.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible. And I think, unfortunately, NLP, neuro linguistic programming, there's a lot of mixed messaging about it out there,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like some
Mm-hmm.
people love it, some people hate it. They think it's like
Mm-hmm.
the worst thing in the world. Maybe if you're not in the personal development space, you might not even know that. But because I'm a coach, obviously I talk to a lot of people, right? And there's a lot about that. But I think your story is just proof that it changes lives,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like there's the potential there to have huge shifts. And that the path that you talked about tracing back, tracing back from that, the rejection, and all the way back to the providing for your family, and feeling inner peace, and like those core values, that is
Mm-hmm.
incredibly valuable stuff. Can you imagine if
Mm-hmm.
everybody had that, if that's just how we lived our lives with that level of awareness?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Would be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I know. It would be awesome. It would be awesome. Yeah. One other thing, and you've used this term a couple of times now, and I was wondering if you could give us a definition in case somebody doesn't know. Emotional intelligence.
Emotional intelligence. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, well, I'll tell another story.
Okay.
So, close to the beginning of my, uh, entrance into personal development is my wife and I. We had a weekend. There were some friends who went away. They had a really nice house, so they said, "Hey, just come and stay in our place for a few days." So we had this nice house on a farm, and we're just enjoying a relaxing getaway. And we have had a conversation, and I forget if it was a debate or we were, getting in a bit of an argument. But my wife, she said to me, she said, "Orrin, if I want to know facts and information, I can go to Google." She said, "I want to know who you are. I don't really know who you are. What are your opinions? What are the things that you feel?" And for me, that hit me like a ton of bricks, right?
Mm.
And she was right, because I was very good at talking about what I understood or what I thought.
Yes.
But who I was just, that was unknown to me.
Hmm.
And so I was like, man, I need to really know what this is. And so a week later, she found a book in the Salvation Army called Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman,
Hmm.
which was the foundational book in this field of emotional intelligence. And essentially, Daniel Goleman taught that there's IQ, and then there's EQ. EQ is people who have an intelligence and a competency in understanding their own emotions and the emotions of others. And the people who have high EQ, emotional intelligence, have like a 70% greater success rate in in connecting with others, in leading others, just in, almost every task that we have to do that involves other people.
Mm. Yeah.
And so that was my entrance into emotional intelligence. And so that's really the field. And
Okay.
understanding self-awareness, self-regulation, social awareness, and then social regulation
Yeah.
are the four competencies of emotional intelligence.
Amazing. Thank you for that. Thank you. I think that that term is thrown around a lot, but I think a lot of people don't actually understand exactly what it means. So thank you for explaining it. It makes a lot of sense. It really does.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I love that story about your wife. She was right on. I have Google. If I wanted facts, I could just get on Google. That's not what I'm asking.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It
Nice.
was hard to hear, but it
I
was good.
well, quite often the things that help us the most are the hardest to take
Yeah,
sometimes, aren't they? Right? It's like a bit of tough love, but it helps you grow.
yeah.
Hmm. 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 So, or in this journey that you have been on from being the boy who had very low self-esteem to slowly learning who you are to being introduced to this world of personal development and emotional intelligence, and now you're in this place where you're helping people sort of do the same thing.
Mm.
Do you label this, label it, but does the term self-love feel true to you? Is this self-discovery? Is it acceptance? Like what feels most true to you?
Mm. I think there is that is true. I think if every person, I wrote a post about this yesterday, is one of the things that John Maxwell, one of the most influential things that he did is I just really sensed he was a guy who cared, and he said that once on a podcast. He said, if I could sit in front of you, one thing that I would let you know is that you are valuable, is that
Mm.
you are important, and that you're here to make a difference. And I was listening to this podcast, when I was farming, out on a tractor, and it was like, just, this is, I I'm so thankful for John Maxwell because he spoke right to the heart of the matter. Is every person is so valuable, and I think if we saw that, the result would be, yeah, of course, you have to have a self-love or a self-acceptance when you see how amazing you are.
Yeah.
But oftentimes we have beliefs that kind of block ourselves from seeing this truth,
Hmm.
and we see a lot of really negative things about ourselves that yeah,
Yeah.
don't help.
Yeah. And I think unfortunately that's like normalized in society nowadays, isn't it? To see the negative things, to talk about the negative things, to talk about the things that we want to change or the things we don't like, instead of talking about the good things, right? It's seen as being, you're full of yourself, or, your ego is really big, but actually it's kind of just like making peace
Mm.
with yourself. But there's this like notion that it's a bad thing to like who you are.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. Which is,
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope that's one of my hopes with this podcast, is that conversations like this will change that. Because
Hmm.
this is not about being all, in your head and having a big ego. This is just about accepting who you are and then doing good with that.
Exactly. So much of it, Katie, is about balance,
Yeah.
right? It's like positive thinking. Well, thinking about the positive things is incredibly powerful.
Hmm.
But yeah, if you go too far, what people call it, I don't really like the term toxic positivity, but essentially when you're positive and you refuse to acknowledge, negative facts or negative things that are going on, well, that's just denying reality. So
Yeah.
I want to take, and so same thing with what you're talking about. Yeah, I want to love and see the value in myself, but hey, let's not ignore the value of everyone else who's around us,
Yes.
right? Let's not ignore the perspective, right? Which I think is the definition of humility, seeing yourself in perspective
Yeah.
and everyone who is equally valuable, really
Yeah.
living that out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
So, Oren, on this journey that you've been on, so you talk about John Maxwell, that amazing book that was the beginning of you sort of changing your life,
Mhm.
discovering emotional intelligence. What other tangible things have you done, or do you still do, that are part of your journey? Is it other reading? Are you doing like self-reflection, journaling? Is there like a physical practice? Like, what does that look like for you?
Hmm. I could say all of the above,
Hmm.
Katie.
Hmm. Yep.
Yeah. just as a person who is really hungry to grow, and I don't want to waste my life. And so when I have a huge, a deep hunger, not just for knowledge. Like I know lots of people that have a hunger for knowledge, but specifically a knowledge that's going to help me to change and to develop and see things different and better. And not everyone likes that because it requires a lot of work.
Yeah.
But the benefit that personal development has brought to my life has been so amazing. And so reading, I would say reading. If there's one habit I would say that has been so beneficial to me over the past number of years, it's been reading. Pick up a book that I know is going to challenge me and go through it, and then take that knowledge and then say, okay, how does my life need to change in light of what I've just read?
Yeah.
And then doing it.
Mm,
I would say if I was to boil it down to one practice, I'd say,
yeah. And I think what you said too is really important. It's not just reading the book and putting it down and moving on with things as they were. It's reading the
hmm
book, taking it on board,
yeah,
and then implementing.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Whatever feels good. Like I mean, I know, I think we all probably know people who are like self-help junkies, right? They're just reading book after book after book after book, and that's great. But then they always wonder why things don't change. And it's like, well, it's not just
Yeah,
reading. You've got step one, but you then have to do something with what you've read.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I
Yeah,
I
I've
had
had these conversations.
yeah.
Sounds like you've had too.
I have. I had a client recently who was, I read all these books. I have this huge library and none of it's sticking. And it's like, well, we need to talk about the process. It's not just the reading of the book. It's the next
Yeah.
step. Yeah. So, Oren, now that you're in this place of really being good with yourself, but also like learning and growing and being like hungry for that, like you said,
hmm
how is your mental health, your emotional well-being, how is that different now than say, you know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say that my life is so much well, it's not at all easier than it was back then. I still am encountering challenges, and I still, in the midst of those challenges, still oftentimes results of, fear or frustration or all these negative emotions. They're real, right? This is what happens as a person goes out and steps outside their comfort zone. So the journey to self-love and to a healthy self mindset isn't the desire that suddenly you're going to have an easy life, but it's just that I'm much better at dealing with it.
Yeah.
Is that something comes and I know how to deal with it, right? There's a frustrating situation and I know how to be intentional with that feeling, and so I'm able to maintain a place of centeredness. I think is really, of centeredness and also flexibility,
Yeah.
where I have a purpose and I know I'm moving forward. And yeah, sometimes, my day, is thrown off by something. We're going to have actually our first child in 3 weeks, and that's going to throw off our lives. I know.
Yeah.
But the centered of purpose, I'm still going to be moving forward.
Right. Right.
And there's a flexibility then to adapt and to say, okay, I have to do it. I have a daughter now to love and to take care of.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but just uh, yeah, I would sum it up to those: the flexibility
Mm-hmm.
and the place of centeredness.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Congratulations, by the way. That's very
Thank
exciting.
you.
It's very exciting. Yeah, and I love that because it's so simple, right? It's none of this crazy stuff. Life isn't suddenly just like, rainbows and unicorns and perfection. Like you're still human, having a human experience, going through all the same
Mhm,
things as everybody else. It's just that you are equipped to manage it in
mhm,
a very different way.
mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to all your listeners who maybe listen to this because they, to listeners who maybe struggle with self-love, is that's what, I want to see, and that's what Katie wants to see for you,
Mhm.
right? That you would see that you would say, hey, I can actually deal with these things. I can move forward. I can process and move forward in a healthy way. And I am worth it. I am worth putting that effort in.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oren, how has this journey of self-love, self-acceptance, self-discovery, how has this influenced your work as an entrepreneur, both starting a business and then offering what you offer today? Tell us about that.
I think part of my journey of self-love was part of my journey of seeing and recognizing and accepting my the significance of who I am, of my place being here, and the difference that I have to make in the world. You know, back years ago when I was growing up, what I was sharing was I didn't expect much of life, and I didn't think that life expected much of me.
Mm-hmm.
But as that has changed, that has brought me into a place where I believe very strongly that I'm here to make a difference. And I believe with my actions. And so when I'm moving into business, when I'm helping clients, I'm seeing them transform. And it's not as surprising anymore because it's something that's just an outflow of, yeah, of course, other people are being transformed because this is my powerful journey that I'm able to share with other people.
Right.
And so that's really, greatness. That's the peak of maturity when you're at the place of strength and then you're able to pass that on to others. And so
Absolutely.
that's what it's been for me.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible. I love that. And hearing your story today and listening to all these things that you have overcome and learned and gone through, it makes perfect sense that you do what you do and that you are a
Yeah.
coach and that you're helping other people do the same thing, right? It's kind of like, of course you are. Of course this is what you do.
Yeah.
Like what else would you be doing with it? Like that there's
Yeah,
there's a
totally.
there's a reason that you've gone through all of that.
Yeah, yeah. There's not a disconnect. No.
No. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No. If there was one exercise or practice or one thing that you would recommend to listeners, maybe there's somebody listening who is,
Hmm.
where you were, years ago. Is there one thing that you would recommend people start with?
Hmm. Um, I would say, can I give you two?
Absolutely.
Okay, I want to give one because this is just who I am and part of my story is prayer.
Yeah.
Is just, hey, talk to your creator and have that conversation. If he made you and he made you good, right? Begin to explore that. And so the other one that I would say is have a morning ritual to really get you centered, to get you moving forward. And one that I would recommend is Hal Elrod's Savers Miracle Morning is the book, and you can find YouTube video summaries, and that has been very helpful for me to to really get going in the morning because how you spend your first hour really has an inordinate amount of influence on how you spend the rest of your day.
Hmm.
And so really get a good solid morning ritual going.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. um what is his name again, in case somebody didn't catch it?
Oh, Hal Elrond.
Hal Elrond. Okay.
But
Yes.
but the book is called Miracle Morning, and it's
Okay.
also, yeah, search it on YouTube video. There's some good clips there that
Cool.
will just summarize the practices.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. That's good. Yeah, it is amazing how we spend our mornings. It dictates the rest of the day. And if
Hmm.
you start your morning really great, it makes the rest of the day,
Hmm.
it's so much easier to have a really good day and a productive day and to feel great. And
Totally,
if your morning is not great, that's
totally.
challenging. You're going to have a challenge with a newborn having a good morning routine.
No, no, I'll just tell her to be quiet,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
right?
Good luck. Good luck. Best wishes.
Thanks.
Best wishes with that
Yeah.
one. You're gonna need it. No, babies are beautiful. It'll change your life, I'm sure, in every possible way. In
Hmm.
every possible
Hmm.
way for the best. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, Oren, if listeners want to get in touch with you, if they want to learn more about the work that you do, or if they want to access
Hmm.
something of yours, what is the best place for them to go to do that?
Yeah. Yeah. So what I was thinking of is I run a webinar on overcoming inner resistance. Actually, I alluded to it earlier when I had this conflict and how I just was able to sort it out. So I teach that monthly on a complimentary webinar. And so if you go to my website, it's lionheartleadership.ca /webinar. So very simple, very easy. lionheartleadership.ca /webinar. And so there we go through the practice and how you can be equipped to overcome your inner resistance.
That's amazing. I love that you do that monthly and that that's a complimentary offering. And it sounds really valuable. That's amazing. Okay, I'll make sure that the link for that is in the show notes. So if anybody's listening and wants to find out, just click through. It's nice and simple.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Orrin, as we're getting ready to wrap up, is there anything else you would like to share? Any last bits of wisdom or knowledge or inspiration or anything else that's sort of on your heart that you want to share with us today?
I would say just do the difficult things, step outside your comfort zone, because when oftentimes when there's a fear, that's when you're afraid of doing something, that's usually the next thing that you have to do. And so growth is hard, but growth is so worth it. So that's my last word.
I love it. I love it. That's perfect. Okay, we're going to end it there. I don't think we could end on a better spot. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story with us and all of your wisdom and your knowledge. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you sharing vulnerably.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you, everyone.